Hey guys, it's Jamie Scrimger here, second wife, stepmom of 3, and mom of 1. And you're listening to my podcast, where we talk about all things motherhood, stepmotherhood, and living a kick-ass life. If you're ready for raw and real conversations and are striving to live your very best life, then you are in the right place. Every week, I'll provide you with tips and strategies and mindset shifts to inspire you to live your own version of a kick-ass life, while bringing you along as I create my own. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. So a few weeks back, I received an email from a longtime follower and amazingly talented stepmom blogger, Beth from Babbling Blonde blog. I love Beth's story, her perspective, and her commitment to following her heart. So here's her deal. Beth grew up in a small town in West Virginia in a super conservative rural dot in coal country, USA. About 5 years ago, she moved to Pittsburgh and ended a 7-year relationship with her college boyfriend. About a year after that, she realized she was in love with her best friend, Jen, who had an incredible 3-year-old daughter. Jen and Beth moved in together in 2016, and Beth officially became a stepmom in 2017. Obviously, being in a same-sex relationship makes Beth's story a little different than your standard stepmom blogger. So when she had trouble relating to what she saw online, she started blogging about her own experience. In this episode, Beth and I talk about all things stepmom life, including Beth's transition from single and straight to not only being in a same-sex relationship, but having an instant family. We also tackle her family's reaction to this huge change, what it was like to move to a small town where her partner's ex had deep roots, her biggest mistakes as a stepmom, what makes being a stepmom in a same-sex relationship even more complicated, and one of the habits that she thinks that stepmoms should break. I love this episode and I just adore Beth, and I am so excited to introduce you to her. Let's dive in. All right. Hello. So I am here with Beth from Babbling Blonde. Guys, I cannot tell you how excited I am to sit down and talk to you, Beth. Like, I've been following you on Instagram and you are cracking me up. Like, if you are not...
Thanks.
If you are not following Beth on Instagram, you've got to go over there because she's keeping it real, which is what I love.
Trying to.
Yeah, it's a pretty funny feed over there. So definitely, guys, you have to go over and check it out. So before we dive in, I have lots of questions. Can you, Beth, tell everyone about yourself? Give us your story.
Yeah. So I grew up in a super small town in West Virginia in the States. I moved north to the big city of Pittsburgh when I was in my mid-20s. And I actually met my wife. We worked together. And we were best friends for about 2 years, totally platonically. I thought I was straight, had only ever dated men. So I was single and I had just gotten out of a 7-year relationship with a guy who I had kind of moved up to Pittsburgh with it was my college relationship. And we split, and my best friend, Jen, had also just recently split from her partner of about the same amount of time, who she had adopted a child with at birth. And it was kind of one of those crazy things where when we both were available, I began to see her in this light that I didn't realize was even possible for me before. So I realized that I was actually falling in love with my best friend, and who also had a child who I already knew, but not, obviously in the same context. She would come into the office sometimes and she'd come and write on my whiteboard. Like, she was 3. So she was just like my best friend's super cute kid. And so when our relationship evolved, I became in a relationship with a woman, which was brand new to me. And then a relationship with someone who had a child, which was so new to me. So this whole stepmom and married and queer thing has rocked my world over the past 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. And you know what? I was reading your stuff and I was thinking back to how I felt. I felt like I moved to a whole different country where they speak a different language when I went from just kind of, living the single life. And then all of a sudden I was a stepmom to 3. But man, you really switched gears.
Yeah. Well, and I never, through the whole process in the beginning, one of the hardest things was trying to figure out what was just specific to me new and what was specific to being like an LGBT person or being a parent or being a stepmom. Is like, which which experience does this fall, like which bucket does this fall into as being unfamiliar?
Yeah. And so what was that first year like when you guys first got, you're married and you're all of a sudden a stepmom, same sex relationship, like a whole new world?
Yeah. It's such a big adjustment. There's a dynamic when and I'm out in public with my wife without my stepdaughter where people, I'm still a non-traditional family, even when I'm out with just her without the kids. And so it's adjusting to people seeing us as a family and people not seeing us as a family. Like the simple thing is like when my wife and I go out on a date, it's people assume we have separate checks and stuff like that. And so when stepmoms talk about people asking like, oh, who's your mom, or who is this, your daughter, or whatever, it's the first year was full of those initial like uncomfortable looks and conversations that I wondered so much where I was going to fit in. And especially because my stepdaughter already has two moms. So my whole first year was full of trying to figure out what my role was, because I wasn't filling a mom role in the house that I lived in because she already had one.
Right.
And I'm clearly not a dad. So
no, you're not.
No.
Just to give you a visual, Beth is like the prettiest blonde. Like she is like this. You're definitely not a dad. No.
No. So the honeymoon phase was amazing, but I found myself trying to figure out how to. So, Jen and I didn't move crazy quickly, but we moved fairly quickly when we finally got together because we had already known each other for so long. And so I was also trying to figure out like how to date a person who wasn't a man, which was I don't want to say strange. It wasn't strange, but it's so brand new within itself. So I'm like trying to figure out this partner dynamic with someone who isn't a guy. At the same time, I'm trying to figure out a mom dynamic with a child.
Right. And, I often think when I'm trying to have a conversation with Darren, and women and men think in very, very different ways. And there's so many times where, we'll be having an argument and he'll think it's about the dishes in the sink, but it's not about the dishes in the sink. It's about so many other bigger things. But as the man, for him, it's about the dishes in the sink and the actual issue, where I'm all about like all the emotion and the feelings and everything kind of leading up to it. So
Jamie, there are so many emotions in our house all the time.
Yeah. Part of me is like, I just wish that you understood, my perspective and what it's like to see things through, a woman's eyes, not to generalize, but just from, this perspective. So part of me was like, you know what, if I was married to a woman, maybe it would be easier because they get it. Or is it just a whole lot of emotion?
It's both. It's really refreshing to feel like I can be so open with her, because sometimes when she can see that I'm frustrated or like she already understands why sometimes before I even say it, which is great. Where, sometimes even the most sensitive guy, I think, is just not, I hate to fall into the stereotypes, but their brain's just not wired that way. And so I'll walk by and say, the dishes are in the sink, and I'm frustrated. And she's like, I know, because the shoes are at the door and the dishes, like she can see the wheels turning in my head. But then sometimes because she's also like me, we can start talking about the dishes in the sink and end the conversation 2 hours later on something that we've both spilled our guts and we're crying, and it's all, especially if we're PMSing at the same time.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. It's it can take simple conversations to a whole different level sometimes when they probably shouldn't. But for the most part, it's so nice because I feel like she understands me more than anybody else could.
Oh, I love it. I love your story. So, okay. So I know when I told my dad that I was going to marry a man with kids and become a stepmom, he wasn't totally thrilled because he really didn't, he didn't want that for his daughter, to be quite honest. Like, we grew up in a divorced family. We knew how complicated it could be. And he just, it wasn't what he saw for me. And he wasn't totally thrilled with that at the beginning, because it also was a huge change. How was it when you told your family? So not only are you, getting together with someone with kids, but it's the same sex relationship, like everything has just kind of switched. How did your family react to everything?
Yeah. So I grew up in a step family too. My mom was married to a guy. They're not together anymore, but she was married to a guy for 15 years. And I had a stepbrother for that time. So in the core years of growing up, and their situation was awful, really, really bad with his ex. I mean, there were like restraining orders involved, like there were legal things. It was the worst case scenario for that kind of situation. So, but that part of things wasn't even in my mind because I was coming out to my mom, and at the same time I was telling her that I'm also dating somebody with kids who she knew. She had met Jen several times. When I sat down to tell her, I said, I'm seeing somebody and I'm not sure how to tell you or how you're going to react. And so she jumped into trying to start to guess what this like thing was about this person that she might not react well to. And her first question was, she said, is he way older than you? And I didn't know how to answer that because there isn't that age gap. She is 10 years older than me. And then her second question, she said, or does he have kids? And so those were both yeses, but she kept saying he, and I was like, And so I finally just spit it out, and she kind of laughed a little bit, and she was like, oh, because she was so perplexed by the fact that I couldn't answer the questions that she was asking me. But, she was initially worried about her own because of her own experiences of being a stepmom. And then twofold, there's still a lot of people who don't accept LGBT families, especially where I grew up. And so her worries for me in the beginning were just, how are people going to how hard of a life are you going to have now? I've been lucky in a lot of ways on both sides of that coin, but she was super happy for me because she could see that I had never been so happy, but she was worried that I was going to have a tough future.
Right. And what I think is great about you guys though is you tackle those issues head on.
Yeah.
In watching your Insta stories the other day, you guys were out for dinner
yeah.
and someone had been staring or something like that, and you went online and you literally just addressed it. And
yeah.
That's what I think is so important because, if you don't address it and you kind of, just let it happen and like sit there in that discomfort and just allow that to kind of snowball, that's when it just gets out of control, and no one's going to change the conversation if someone doesn't start the conversation.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. And I just love how you guys both address it head on.
Well, and it's two totally different experiences for us because my wife, I always hate to get too stereotypical, but she looks gay. Like you can clearly, when you meet her, it's pretty obvious that she's lesbian. And for me, it's the opposite. People meet me and they assume that I'm straight because they see my wedding. The woman who runs the parking garage at the college where I'm in school right now asks me how my husband is almost every week when I'm leaving the parking garage. And I don't bother correcting her because I don't know her well enough to even have an awkward conversation. But so Jen and I, we see the world so differently because I get frustrated that people assume something about me, and she gets frustrated that people always assume the opposite about her. So people are always looking at her because if people are uncomfortable with the fact that she's gay, she looks it right up front. And I don't. So I think like the other night, people were looking at us because they were trying to figure out if we were together or not. And so you never know what someone's opinion is. And sometimes I care, sometimes I don't. Like sometimes I just want to be able to go out with my wife and have nobody looking at us. But sometimes I proudly want to be like, yeah, we're together. We're on a date. And I think that you have to find a balance between making yourselves feel unapproachable and having the conversations when they need to be had, and like building bridges instead of tearing them down when there's an opportunity to, and also making sure that people are aware. Like for people who are accepting, some people are shocked when they find out that we face stuff like that, or the people who are uncomfortable, like, let's just talk about it. Tell me how you feel and I'll see if I can help at all.
Right. And, I think it's good to have those conversations, especially when people are curious. Like, I'm just curious of the dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to, blended families and step parenting. It's like, you have 3 women in a co-parenting relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. And my wife's ex has a boyfriend right now who she's been with for a while, and he has a daughter. So there's even more blending going on that side. But I mean, they've been together for about a year. But I mean, at the core of it, like at all the events and stuff right now, it's pretty much 3 women. Yeah. So it's unique.
Absolutely. And, sometimes I think about, when it comes to the ex and the stepmom and all of that, there's a lot of emotions and, territory marking and, different
Yes.
parenting styles and all of that. And I'm just thinking that's why I was like, wow, that's not just two, that's three. Actually, that poor man.
Oh, I know. Right. Yeah. It's interesting when we all hang out. Sometimes I feel bad for him, but I think sometimes it's good. We try to get my stepdaughter around men who we think are really great men, just so that we don't want to raise her in an environment where she's terrified of guys or, uncomfortable having one care for her and stuff. And so he's a really great guy. And so it's nice to have her be around someone that we all trust and who can show her, how to have like comfortable, confident conversations with a caretaker guy. But yeah, he stays out of the intense like parenting conversations usually.
Smart man.
Yeah.
So how is your co-parenting relationship when it comes to, the back and forth, the two houses?
It's good. In the beginning, we bought a house in the town that my wife's ex is from. So we moved up here so that when Mia started kindergarten, so that we could make sure that we had her 50% of the time. Because before we lived almost an hour away for work for Jen. And it worked because she could spend like a week with us and then a week with her because she wasn't attached to being at like a school all day, every day. But when she started kindergarten, we bought a house up here. So in the beginning, I think there were some territorial things because I was coming into this town that she grew up in. And so everybody here knew her and knew them when they were together and the family. And I work from home. And so I struggled with ways to like kind of make my own space. And I think that, I'm also a lot younger than both of them. And so I think there were some initial like, I hate to use the word catty, but we were all catty at times. I think that we're all women. And so there were some things that we had to adjust to, but her other, like Jen's ex is an amazing mom. I think she's a really, really incredible parent. And I think that, we knew each other before. And so we already we weren't friends, but we had a decent relationship before all of this. And so once the three of us all got past of this strange dynamic of Jen and I being together and dealing with houses and switching. And we can text or talk on the phone, or she can come pick something up from me if Jen's not home. We've moved past like any of the pettiness. And I mean, there are obviously still nobody's going to agree on how to parent all the time. Even Jen and I don't agree on everything all the time. So when you have three people disagreeing on stuff, but we have a level of respect for each other as one, queer women, and two, as women and as parents of Mia, and trying to make sure that she has a great life and, is accepted by everyone because she does have a unique story. So we kind of have this united front going on that I think works really well.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt this podcast episode for just 1 minute because I want to make sure that you know about the free guide that I just released. So this one is for anyone who is dealing with a high conflict ex. Look, in a perfect world, our co-parenting relationships would be all hearts and sparkles. Everyone would be able to put their emotions aside, realize that you're on the same team, and actually act in the best interest of the kids. But unfortunately, that's just not always the case. Now, it is important to remember that we all see the world through a different lens and have different perspectives based on our individual experiences. But unfortunately, sometimes when you're co-parenting, you need to deal with the lens and the different perspectives of a high conflict personality, and that can be tough. So, in this free download, I share my tips and strategies for co-parenting with this type of personality, from how to keep the drama from impacting your marriage to how to set boundaries and actually stick to them. If you've been struggling in the co-parenting department, you'll want to check this out. So you can download your copy of this guide at www.jamiescrimger.com/high conflict X. And you wrote a blog post, and it was 5 harmful habits that stepmoms need to break. Mm-hmm. And you talked about that stepmoms need to stop constantly micro co-parenting. And
Yeah, I've been super guilty of that too.
oh yeah, I'm really good at that. I'm really good at that. Like, let's talk about that for a second, because I do feel like, sometimes, especially if I think you and I maybe have a similar personality, as we like things to go certain ways, and we have opinions, and we're very expressive and all of that. And that's a thing that stepmoms can really get into, and trying to kind of micromanage the way that they're co-parenting and they're communicating with their partner.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's a tricky thing, because you want your opinion to be heard, and you want to help your partner deal with things in the best way possible. But it can become this extra issue in your relationship that isn't actually your problem, but yet in a way, kind of, it is your problem. It's like, it's just this kind of like tricky area.
The funny thing is with that, so we've realized that my parenting style is a lot more like Jen's ex's parenting style. So she and I parent like very close to the same. And I don't want to say we're stricter, but I guess we are. We like things a certain, order. And my wife is a little bit more lax, and she is, kind of more of an anything goes kind of parent. So she probably feels a bit ganged up on sometimes, but I have to realize that there are some things that she says yes, and I disagree, or like you mentioned before with the shoes. And sometimes I want to jump in, and it's not my place. And one of the conflicts that we have is, we want to grow our family more. We want kids together. And one of the things that we run into is my wife always says, well, I want you to treat Mia like she's yours. I want you to parent her like you'll parent our babies when we have them. And so when we butt heads over something, I'm like, well, you said that you wanted me to parent her like she's mine. Do you or don't you? And we had this conversation recently where I was like, it's okay with me if there is something that is different for her than is different for our kids. Because sometimes I think that's just how it has to be. And we don't have kids yet, but I know you have an ours baby and 3 stepkids, and you've talked about that before. Like, some stuff is just going to be different because they have started a parenting dynamic separately from you. And so there are going to be rules that I think should be put in place, and that I might put in place when we have a kid together, that is just not going to work for her consistently, because because she's here half the time, and 2, because she has they've established things together before I came into the picture. And so, but sometimes it's hard to decide which battles are worth it and which ones are not.
I know. And that's something that I still even struggle with. But, when you're saying, well, you say you want me to parent her like, she's my own. And I feel like they do to an extent, until that's different than what they say.
Yes.
Right? It's like you want me to do that until you're ready to jump in and trump me, because and then you put me back in my place. So it's this really awkward thing that step parents have to deal with, is trying to navigate where that place is and how to treat them like they're your own while not overstepping. And
well, and especially because I don't have my own yet. And so there are some times where she'll point out, like, I think that you'll do that differently when it's yours. And I'm like, how we have this imaginary argument about something that we don't know yet.
Yeah, that would be 2 women. Right?
Well, yes, that's what we circle around this thing that doesn't even exist. And it's like, well, how do you feel about how you're going to feel later? And it gets really out there, and we just have to stop ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But I will say she is right in some respects. Like, there are things. I never thought that Reese would ever be in our bed. She's in our bed every single night. I never thought that I would let her sit on the counter or eat this sugary stuff before dinner, or like all of these things that I was super strict on with my stepchildren, in those first couple of years. Now I think that the way that being a stepmom has made me a better mom is that there's so many things I just don't give a shit about anymore, because I've realized how much they don't matter. But that's where I think sometimes, childless stepmoms, and I was talking about this earlier today. It's like, we would feel insulted when they say you don't understand because you don't have kids, because we very much treat, our stepchildren like they're our own. And then when you have your own, you realize how much is different. And it's still the same, but it is different. And it's this awkward conversation to even have, because people are ready to pounce on you when you actually say that kind of stuff out loud. But it really is tricky, and it's true. The ours baby, I think that often people will overthink it too, and worry about the different rules. And you know what? There are different rules for tons of people in life. So, it works. It works the
well,
different
even just
dynamics.
down to, my stepdaughter's 7 now, and when trying to figure out like chores and stuff like that, and what chores should we give her? What is she's here half the time. So what is feasible for her to be responsible for here when we don't know we try to keep things pretty streamlined, but she's not going to get in trouble for forgetting to put her clothes away if that's not something she does at her other house, or keeping in line the responsibilities. And I think sometimes we can be too hard on ourselves if, we feel like we're not implementing certain things or teaching certain things, because sometimes it's really hard to do things consistently when you don't have your kids in your house 7 days a week, every single week.
Absolutely. And, people will say, well, it's my house, my rules, and we can have rules at our house and they can have rules at their house and yada, yada, yada. And it's true. You can have different sets of rules. I don't know about you, but I sometimes have to remind my stepchildren 8 to 10 times to do something before it actually registers in their head. And that's not because they're trying to be little jerks. It's because they're kids and they just forget things. So throw in 2 different houses with 2 different rules. Like we have, I notice on transition day, it takes us a couple of days to kind of get into the groove here, even though it's been the same rule for almost 7 years now. So that's why, people do need to keep that they have to consider that it is hard for these kids going back and forth with different expectations.
Yeah, it's a lot for them to keep track of. And especially because, I know, my wife has never been a parent before Mia either, but the parenting thing is still so new for me that, I didn't spend a pregnancy prepping or reading all the books and doing all the stuff. And so there are so many things where, sometimes I can be like, well, why do I have to tell her 5 times to take her plate in? And I don't have anything to compare that to, like, developmentally, or is she not listening to me because I'm not her real mom? Like, there's so many things that run through your head when sometimes it's just simple. She's 7 years old. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Sometimes it's, yeah.
I remember Darren, the one time I was like, they don't listen to me. They don't, it's because I'm their stepmom. And I was kind of getting into this spiral about, just my role in the house. And he's like, Jamie, they don't listen to me either. And
anybody,
that's just like kids. You actually have to tell them over and over and over again. And that's so normal. But that's the thing. When you don't have that reference, you don't know. You just think that that's age appropriate behavior, that they should be listening to that. That's where I find it so helpful to find friends who have kids. And you were talking about moving into the town where your wife's first wife had lived there and kind of being like the new person in town. And that's so similar to me. I felt like it's hard to meet new friends in a place where you feel like you're the new girl and people are talking and people are making assumptions about you, because I
absolutely
definitely felt that. And people always ask me, how do you meet new friends in a town where the ex lives? And you just have to do it. You just have to.
It's hard.
I know it's so hard and you feel so insecure, but I know for me, you just kind of have to put yourself out there, and some people will like you. Some people will feel loyal to the ex, and then you'll find some good friends amongst all of those people, right? It just kind of.
And for me, I had to get over like worrying about wondering what everybody was thinking and what they had heard and who they were friends with. Like every time I came into contact with like another mom, or I was the place I always buy my coffee, like in the beginning, I would be so paranoid, like, oh, are they friends with her? What do they think about me? And I was so worried about that all the time. And I think things got better the second I stopped giving a shit. When I started to realize, like, no, I own a house here. I live here. I'm helping to raise a child here. I had to put my foot forward and kind of like command my spot. And I think as soon as I exuded that a little bit, people started to be, whether I was making it up in my head or not, I think people become more receptive to you the moment you open yourself up a little bit. And more likely than not, people are gonna, whether they had an assumption about you, it's pretty easy to show someone that you're a good person if you're just don't have your guard up and you're just being yourself.
Absolutely. And, I think that the moment that you decide to be confident and not spiral, because we can spiral, we, thinking about what other people are thinking about us, a lot of the times they're not really thinking about us that much, but because we're so it's
too much self-importance, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. We're so wrapped up. And, even for me at one point, we live in, a smaller area, and it can be a bit of a gossipy place. And I know there was some gossip, but, how selfish was that of me to think that I was the only gossip that people were talking about, because we've got a whole lot of other gossip going on in this town too. So they had, and I remember saying to my husband, like, well, they have a lot of content to cover. So they're obviously not thinking about us as much as I think that they are. But you have to just get secure in yourself and just be cool to go out and just put yourself out there and meet those people, because you're going to run into people who are friends with the ex. And there's people who are super loyal, and you're going to have that divide, and that's fine. Yeah. I don't actually want my best friends to be best friends with my husband's first wife. Like, that's just a little too close for me. But then you're going to find your new friends that maybe didn't have that same connection. But if you don't put yourself out there,
we can expect to win everybody over.
No.
And I think you have to be okay with that.
Yeah. And that's what I always say. I'm like, for the longest time, all I wanted was everyone to like me and to approve of me. But I don't really like everyone else. Right. So why do I expect that of other people? That is what it is. So, my question for you is, what do you think the hardest thing about being a stepmom is?
Oh, gosh. So for me, the hardest thing is, it's definitely been trying to want to be involved in every sense of the word, because I do love my stepdaughter, I think, as much as I'm capable of, as if she's mine, but not being part of like the little things that clearly she already has two parents for. Like something simple as sometimes I won't know that she's enrolled in like a swim class or something until it's like the last minute, and I have to figure so it's the simple, I think it's caring as much as if she's mine, and wanting to, and parenting her as much as my wife does, and still not completely being part of the loop with it's nobody's fault, but it's the reminders that I get that I'm actually not the same.
Yeah, that is so
if
true.
That makes sense.
I hear you. It's like you're having that small talk conversation at dinner table, and you're like, how did I not know that? What do you mean they're in that? Like, where was I in that conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. I feel that too.
And like, I don't go to, I don't, and I think I've seen you say that you don't either, but like, I don't go to parent teacher conferences, because I try my best to understand the way my wife's ex feels about things. And I think that that's something that they can clearly handle. There's no reason for me to be there. They're both super involved. Jen can fill me in on everything when she gets back. I volunteer at the book fair usually that goes on at the same time. So like Mia will go in for a few minutes and then she'll come out and hang with me. But there's still like, and I don't want her to have me in her face all the time. And so there are things that I step away from, maybe like doctor's appointments and conference. And usually, like, I can do that without feeling bitter. And because I know that it probably wouldn't be a huge problem if I jumped in, but it's probably better for me to just not shove myself into everything. But then there are times where I'm like, oh, but I wish I could just seamlessly, like, it would just be assumed that I'm just part of every single thing. And I know that that's not fair either.
Yeah, it's tough to find your role. And then it's also even, I think sometimes as stepmoms, when we want to be we want to be involved in everything, then we overthink, well, why wouldn't I be able to go to the parent teacher conference? It's like, well, it doesn't actually matter. The parent teacher conferences don't actually matter that much, but because we're all into our head about where we should be, or we should be the same as parents because we do all of the jobs, or, whatever spiral we're in that day, we get caught up in the fact that we should be there. But if you guys were a first family, only one of you may go to the parent conference because the other person might have something that night and it's like not even that big of a deal. Right. How many parents, only one of them goes, but then when it becomes this co-parenting situation, sometimes I think stepmoms get into this place where it's like this pissing match and trying to mark their territory when.
Yeah. It might be normal for us not to be there otherwise.
Yeah. Like, let's all just manage our time and divide up these tasks because these kids are busy and there's lots going on.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. It's so funny. Everyone has such a unique step family situation and a unique dynamic, but we all have the same insecurities in different ways, but it really does come down to that whole like finding your place in step parenting. And
yeah, it really does. And in the beginning for us, like I said earlier, for me, it was like, well, not that a stepmom ever tries to fill a mom's shoes and take their place ever, but sometimes, a stepmom usually like slides into the mom role in the house. It was tough in the beginning for me to figure out like, what am I supposed to be doing? Because Jen already thinks like a woman. And so she does the woman thing, like, whether it's something simple, like thinking to pack the lunch, whereas a guy might not, super simple stuff like that. Like I would go to do things and it would already be done. And I'd be like, what's my job supposed to be? How am I supposed to what is this role for me when, I mean, she's filling that role just fine. And so I had to bond with Mia myself and not just as like a mother figure. So we had to figure out how to, like Jen and I had to split like parental responsibilities based on kind of like just our skill sets, and rather than like who's the mom and who's the dad.
Yeah. And you know what? On the flip side, I would say I'd really love if Darren would think about the lunches. And if he would think about those little things, because sometimes I'm like, why am I the only one thinking about that? That would actually, on the flip side, be kind of a nice thing.
Yeah. Well, and now that we've relaxed into things, there are some stuff where I'm like, why do I always have to be the one doing this? But in the beginning, I was like, why can't there be these things where I just have like that? Those are my jobs. And now I'm like, what was I thinking?
I know sometimes we come in guns a-blazing and we want to take on all these responsibilities. And then once we kind of get into the nitty gritty of parenting, we're like, oh yeah, these are actually just a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Like why did I want to have these like minute parenting responsibilities all the time to feel and needed and important? And now like it feels so normal and every day. Then I'm like, nah, you can go pick out her outfit or whatever.
You're like, I don't even care what she wears. You know what though? The one thing I wanted to ask you about, so did you feel like when you came in to this role, you had to kind of like seem like you kind of had it all together and like you were kind of like this new perfect parental figure, kind of that new mom, and just kind of like just show that you were worthy of being there, if that makes sense? Because the reason why I'm asking is I was listening to one of your Insta stories and you were talking about how, you know, at the very beginning, you were like wanting to do these like Pinterest perfect everything. And you thought you were going to be this mom. And then when you got into it, you were like, man, that's a lot of freaking work. Like these Pinterest perfect moms, like how do they keep this together all the time? Because I look back on my first year and I just wanted everyone to think we were so perfect and we had everything together and that this new transition wasn't hard on me and I was doing fine, when inside I was kind of like screaming and struggling. And I know that's something that a lot of people experience in those the beginning stages.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I felt like I was trying to prove something to myself and maybe, you know, maybe to my wife, not because she asked for it, but to everybody else around me, that like, the value, like, look, she picked me. I'm worth it. Like, I am a good parent to Mia. I can handle being a mom. And so I felt, you know, even something simple, we were just talking about lunches. Like, I felt like I had to have like these perfect healthy meals and, you know, that I had to go above and beyond and package things right. And make sure that I remember when you and Darren talked about bedtime, like I was like, I have to make sure that she gets enough rest. And what if she's, you know, cranky, or if they notice that she's coming from our house and not the other house because she's cranky and she's not getting enough sleep. I felt like I had to be this perfect parent to contribute to the fact that like, look, we have this step family, but everything's fine. She's great. She's thriving. Like she had to be the best, and we had to be the best of everything so that people would accept our family the way that it was. And now I'm like, you know, we're all fine. Yeah. You kind of relax.
We're just getting through the day over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we made it.
Fed. Sometimes, yeah, we're fed. You have a shower at the middle of the night. You just exhale. Sometimes lunch gets packed at night. Sometimes it gets packed like 2 seconds before you run out the door in the morning.
Sometimes you don't know when the last bath was, but that's totally okay.
Yes, exactly. Like you just start to realize that whether you are a step parent or a parent or anything, like if you are raising decent humans who treat other people kindly, the rest of it just really sorts itself out. Like everybody's doing a good job.
Oh, I love that. Oh, Beth, you're amazing. Thank you so much for coming on this. This was such a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you. This was awesome. I really enjoyed it.
Amazing. Okay. So where can everyone find you?
So my blog site is babblingblonde.com. Most of my social media channels follow that too. So like my Instagram is at @babbling_blonde. That's pretty consistent. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I prefer Instagram the most because I think you can connect with people a lot that way. My wife and I do bi-weekly videos on Facebook on Wednesdays. So,
and guys, these videos are hilarious. They really are hilarious. I was like cracking right up last week. So I will link everything for everyone below. Thank you so much, Beth, for coming on. You are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Okay, guys, if you like this podcast, please do me a little favor. Take a second and subscribe on iTunes, and then screenshot this podcast, give it a share in social media, and tell your friends what you think. And hey, don't forget to tag me so that I can thank you for helping me spread the word. Thanks so much, and I will talk to you next week.